Across the world, people have been reporting weird slips or glitches in reality. People are jolted forward or backward in time, or to another place altogether. Some people even describe encountering themselves, sometimes older and sometimes younger. Just such a case happened to a fellow named Brandon Thompson in Northern California. I was driving up to Yuba Sutter one day. There, in the middle of country nowhere, is one of those four-way stoplights that makes you wonder why the heck they put it there. Anyway, after the stop, as I was heading northbound, my attention focused on a Ford Galaxy that had stopped in the opposite direction. Both of us slowly accelerated from the stop. As I looked at the car, I recognized one, my uncle in the passenger seat, my aunt with her flaming red hair, and lastly though, I didn't get to see very long, me in the back seat of this Galaxy. I pulled over on the other side of the intersection, got out, and looked at the car disappearing into the distance. Not like poof, but normal-like. I just saw myself, aunt, and my uncle 30 years ago. I had a mind to go after it, but something told me not to. A gut feeling. Seeing that was a treat in itself. I was blown away and still am. Looking back at that one experience, one thing that was not normal was the interior of the car was dark, hard to explain. While it's entirely possible the witness encountered three very similar looking people in a similar car as to the one they drove in 30 years earlier, and that caused him to think he was seeing into the past. However, there are numerous such cases that exist that cause me to wonder if Brandon actually saw what he believes he saw. In my video, Arrival Apparitions, I discussed a case in which a man claims he encountered himself at a gas station. Interestingly, also in that case, the witness felt uneasy about actually attempting to interact with himself, unsure of what would happen. In Northern Ireland, a man named Richard had an equally bizarre encounter, one that spilled out into the street and into pure strangeness as he soon realized the man he was chasing was himself. This account appeared on a July 24, 2015 episode of Midnight in the Desert. Back in the 80s, mid-70s, I was earning more money than I probably should have for a person my age. So I was in the bar one night being the center of attraction, and I was at the bar buying everyone drinks, everyone in the bar. A guy popped me in the back of the head and ran out the door. Well, my hackles got up, and I run after this guy, what I was going to do to him. And I run, and no matter how hard I run, I couldn't catch this guy. And at the very end of the block, 2 blocks up, he turned around and he looked at me, and this guy had white hair and black glasses. I was in my 20s, I had bright red hair, but there was a familiarity about this guy. But now I'm 57, and now I have pure white hair and black-rimmed glasses. I don't know if it was my subconscious or a warning or something from the future warning me about my behavior. I knew there was a familiarity, but what threw me was the white hair and black glasses, because I never imagined myself having that look. But now I look at myself in the mirror and I know exactly who it was. I'm 57, the exact image of the person that I chased that night. Again, was it merely a coincidence, or had the man actually encountered an older version of himself? In 1987, a man named Joe was standing outside a gas station in Maplewood, Missouri, waiting for a friend when he had a fleeting glimpse of another time. All of a sudden, everything got quiet. No traffic noise, nothing. I could see everything around me had changed. The power lines, the gas station, then everything scrambled. Sound came back, everything was back to normal. I stood in the same spot 10 years later, and I saw in real time what I had seen 10 years before. In another instance, a couple parked outside a CVS store saw time repeat itself in an extraordinary way. My husband and I had parked outside a CVS and were crossing the road to go there. As we stepped onto the road, there was a bicyclist who was in front of us just outside the building. He passed by, left to right, about 10 feet away. No biggie, but by the time we reached the walkway, the same bicyclist was to our left. and he had slowed down to let us pass. I gestured to him to go ahead, and he did. There were no other people around, so in essence, there was a few seconds jump back in time, and the bicyclist crossed in front of us twice. I've discussed similar cases in my video Distorted Realities, in which people found themselves in another place, possibly a future or past setting, only to blink back into their present day. A trip to a local Home Depot in the summer of 2012 would forever change a man's life. In the summer of 2012, a simple trip to Home Depot changed the way I look at reality forever. I have been thinking about the details of that event ever since. A friend of mine and I decided to put up a tile backsplash in my kitchen one weekend. Saturday morning, at about 9 a.m., I went to Home Depot, 20 minutes away, to pick up a tile cutter for the job. When the witness returned home, he found his friend was very angry. When asked why, the friend informed him that he had been gone for over 8 hours. I said that's impossible, and that I had been gone maybe an hour. I explained because I was able to pick up the tile cutter almost instantly, hopped in my car, and left. Standing there in the kitchen, I looked at my watch, which was stopped at 9:43 a.m. The clock on the microwave said 5:17. I then looked at and showed him the store receipt to prove when I checked out it said 9:40 a.m. For the life of me, I can't account for the missing 7 or so hours. In 1997, Steve McGill had an eerie experience when he decided to follow his girlfriend back to her place. I was dating a girl at the time, and she and I were at my mom's house. I can't remember what we were doing there, but after a while, my girlfriend said she would go back up home in her own car, about 8 miles north from my mom's house, and I could follow her back when I was done at my mom's. I was going to stay and chat with my mom for a while, but I was tired and decided not to, so said goodbye to my mom and got into my own car. Now, it was no more than 30 seconds to a 1-minute gap between my girlfriend leaving and me leaving, so I expected to catch up to her on the motorway very quickly. There was only one way back home. However, as I traveled, I could not see her car. For some childish reason, I was only 21 at the time, I gained speed to close the gap, and soon found myself doing nearly 90 miles per hour in a bid to catch her. Mile after mile, my speed rose to over 110 miles per hour, but there was still no sign of her. I began to think she had taken a longer detour, or even popped into a shop or something, so I let off the gas a bit, back to nearer 80 miles per hour, as I knew she couldn't possibly still be in front of me, as she was quite a moderate driver and never broke the speed limit. How wrong I was. To my absolute shock and amazement, when I pulled up at her house, not for 1 minute expecting her to be there, her car was there. Not only that, but she had time to call into the local fish and chip shop for tea and was busy plating it up for us for our evening meal. I have since worked out that she would have had to have traveled at 200 miles per hour to get back in time for her to have done what she did. In 1971, Glyn Jones saw something bizarre in the skies of Clare and Suffolk. I was working as a chef in the village of Clare, Suffolk. Traveling one night between 11:30 p.m. and midnight on the back road from Cavendish to Foxearth, a very rural location, I became aware of a low droning sound. I stopped the car on a right-hand curve by a field, got out, and stood on the edge of the field. The night sky was filled with World War II bombers. I would guess I could see more than 30 flying spaced out. I was not. In the same direction, and it was their prop engines producing the noise. I don't recall whether or not they showed any lights. During World War II, this part of eastern England was peppered with airfields from where the bombing raids against Germany were launched. I believe what I saw was maybe one of the 1,000 bomber raids forming, which would have taken place maybe 30 or so years prior to my sighting. It goes without saying that by the 1970s, there would only have been a handful of these planes still airworthy, and they would have been spread about around the world. The fear of ridicule has meant that I have kept this largely to myself, but the utter strangeness of it has never left me. I was neither under the influence of alcohol or drugs. I am pretty level-headed and have not had any other inexplicable sightings before or since. In another instance, a man recalls a time he inexplicably jolted forward in time, or went to another place altogether. This account appeared on a December 21st, 2016 episode of Darkness Radio. This incident occurred in 2013. The witness recalled receiving a letter in the mail informing him that he had to be to court for jury duty. This included the date and the time. As he had already performed jury duty, he knew what to expect. The date was set for noon. It was on a Wednesday. The days passed and I had that date and time in the back of my head. I began preparing for it, telling my boss I needed the day off, etc. Tuesday night came around and I was prepared. Wednesday morning I was counting the minutes until I had to leave. 11:25 a.m. I had to leave at that time because it was a 20-minute ride to the courthouse. I should be there at about 11:45 to 11:50 a.m. 11:25 came around and I head out the door in my old Mustang. About halfway to the courthouse, the man attempted to call his wife, but for some reason, he could not get a signal. This would be the first of many strange things to come. About 20 minutes later, I got to the courthouse, where I had previously had jury duty and no one was there. It was eerily quiet, like if everyone had gone to lunch or something. I was shocked. Did I miss jury duty? I checked around, checked the time on my phone, and it said 12:50 p.m. I stood there staring at my phone in disbelief. How is it 12:50? I thought to myself. I was in shock. From there, the witness left the courthouse and went back to his car. He was surprised to see that the time on the radio's clock read 12:53 p.m. When he attempted to start his car, it wouldn't start. The car was completely dead. Turning the key in the ignition, it only clicked. Stepping out of his car, he popped the hood to have a look. Just then, a police officer pulled up next to him and offered to give him a hand getting his car started. I was still kind of stunned and said, yeah. So he said, I'll just come out and see what I can do. I just have to go punch in. It's almost 1 o'clock, right? I was shocked that the cop acknowledged that it was almost 1 p.m. I checked my phone again, and yes, it's almost 1. So he goes into the station to punch in, and I keep fiddling with my car for a while. As he's heading back out, when I go to start my car, the engine roars to life. He waves at me, noting my car had started, and I leave. Halfway home, I call my wife, and the call actually goes through. I tell her about the bizarre series of events I just went through, and I ask her, what time is it? She says, it's 12:20, hun. I check my phone, and yes, indeed, it was 12:20 noon. I look over at the time on the radio, and it's 12:20. I don't have any explanation how I went 1 hour into the future, then returned to my timeline. If the cop hadn't confirmed the time, I would have just blamed a faulty phone. The world is a strange place.